Oh, I guess I'm live. Good evening. Good. Let me start over again. And we're live. Good evening. Welcome back to Shift the Journey. I'm your host. My name is Tito Amogus. Today, we're supposed to have my friend Treyson on. There is possibly a scheduling conflict going on. Um, so, um, so I'm just gonna hang out here and let's just talk about the show. So, what is Shift the Journey? Um, this we're actually in season two. This is season two. So I started going live um last year, January of 2024. I actually had this I don't know, this thought, this idea that came up a few years ago actually. I worked at a company that often held webinars or had like fun like work related shows and stuff that went live on LinkedIn. And I volunteered to be on the show a few times and I had a lot of fun. And I was like, man, I could host my own show, but what would it ever be about? What would I have to talk about for half an hour, whatever the case may be? And when would I do it? Would I do it during work? Would I do it after work? What made the most sense? And so I actually set up a poll. I set up a poll on LinkedIn. I said, hey, these are the things that every time I talk to somebody at work or somebody, I was in consulting, so anybody on a client call, every time I talk to somebody, the the conversation would go into something about like work, like okay, it was a client call, but like career paths. Career paths is one thing. My uh, career is like a military to civilian transition because I was in the Air Force for 20 years. And then the other thing that would come up was like Filipino food. So I was like, hey, I'm going to have a show. And what do I want it to be about? And so I put out that poll. And like 85%, something like that, 85% of the people who responded said, you should talk about Filipino food. Hey, I'm not opposed, right? But but I really, really wanted to create this whole thing, this whole environment where I get to interview somebody each week and they can talk about their career journey because I know so many people. I have so many people in my network who have transitioned from one industry to another, something like completely unrelated or seemingly unrelated to something that people go, oh man, that's totally different. And so then, with that being said, there are people who are thinking about making a move, making a change, making some kind of career shift, but just don't know how to get there. So I was like, well, I want to share that information. And I want to make it free, free for everybody, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and my Facebook too. Anybody out there who's thinking about making some type of career change, but just don't know how to do it. And so I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And I reached out to like 40 of people in my network, and pretty much everybody said, yeah, I'll do it. The only thing is, time zones and schedules. And I had thought about it initially to go live during lunch because, people are at work, people are engaged. I've seen people get on LinkedIn, those LinkedIn live shows and engage through the chat, during lunchtime. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that. But then like my workload not let me do that. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in the like early evening. And then I started thinking, oh, what day would work? Mondays work. So here we are. And so one of the things that brought this whole thing up too was like when I was retiring from the Air Force. Like I was in the Air Force for 20 years, right? My entire adult life. And when I was transitioning into a corporate job, I didn't know, or say it better, when I was like on terminal leave from the Air Force, and then I was looking for a job in the corporate world. I didn't have a big network. I didn't have a lot of people who could show me around and like show me the ropes and all that. I did have one connection, Chris Spinsick, Spin Man, helped me a lot. And so then I was like, you know what? I want that for every veteran, right? But then I also got connected with people at Nashville Software School. And I'm like, I want this for everybody who's trying to make a career change because career changes are hard. And right now with the job market, it's not great. It's actually I've seen people on like social media say it's like the worst it's been in years, and maybe it is. But I know that the last time we had a crazy thing going on was COVID, and during COVID, I knew so many people who transitioned from something into data. So so I was like, hey, let's talk about all the things that helps you, get from one thing to another. So here we are. Hey, you know what? Guess who just joined us? Hey,
I'm so sorry.
hey, no worries, man. Life is life, and you're not the first person who I've interviewed who was in their car. Um, I can-
I'm gonna be good. I'll put you over here.
okay. Yeah, on like my second, I think I want to say it was my second episode. I interviewed Blake Babin, and Blake, he was at his house, and like kids were being loud, so he hopped in his Jeep and he went over into the Best Buy parking lot over here in Gulfport, Mississippi, and it was
Yeah.
dark, and so he's sitting in his Jeep and he's got this shadow on him, and I told him I felt like I was interviewing Batman. It was crazy, but all right, so everybody, this is Treyson Marks. He's here, ready to go. I had him on the show a couple times last year, and right now, today is his 1 year anniversary of DeMar Consulting Group. Correct. So,
Indeed.
he's here to talk more about his journey and like what this the whole what is it? I can never say that word.
Entrepreneur.
Entrepreneurism is what that's all about. So so last time we talked, well, not last time we talked, but last time you were on the show, you had just started at DeMar Consulting Group,
Yes.
BCG, right?
Yes.
And you were talking about some of the things there. So what would you say, and let's start off easy. So like what would you say the biggest or one of the first adjustments that you had to make in going from working for a company to basically, uh driving, like being a driving force in your small business?
Yeah. So the biggest, probably, I would say it's like maybe a learning curve, was that. So I've been in consulting for a while, so I'm very familiar with like the space, but learning how to do like effectively do biz dev has been a big learning curve for me. I had seen how some sales had happened in the past, and I didn't necessarily love it. But I think it was a lot more of me just not understanding how this space worked. So I was probably a little overconfident in my ability to sell, um, and it's I'm still tweaking it all the time. Um, a big example I would say of that is like early on in my career, um, or in this journey. We pride ourselves in being able to like fit into any situation, and then
Hmm.
being able to solve for those problems. But well, unfortunately for that like method of trying to sell, um, it doesn't land as well as I thought it would have. Like
Hmm.
into an organization being like, yeah, so like, what do you need? We can help out with it. Doesn't work as well as, okay, you want this. These are the 5 steps we're going to do to get you from A to Z, and this is your timeline, is a much better selling motion than uh, than the other thing. And again, I'm still
Yeah.
tweaking that, still learning things, but yeah.
Yeah, I get that because in so many like I was I see like the consulting side of it where like you get into a conversation and then you go, yeah, well, what do you need? But a lot of times the customer or the client doesn't know exactly the things that they need. They present you with facts and then they're like, hey, we're paying a lot of money, so we want you to tell us, the roadmap, right? I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. So, yeah. So, did you take any like business classes or anything coming up through school, or did you have any other like sales experience before going into that?
All my sales experience. Well, yes, I went to school for economics, which I was much more interested in, like a lot of the math part of that,
Oh
and
yeah,
like the business classes were like whatever, and I was like very much interested in this like theory of why people make decisions and stuff like that. And so I enjoyed that part. I didn't pay a lot of attention to my business classes. If you look at my GPA, my core studies were really good, and everything else was kind of meh. And, and hence the 2.9. Um, um, but my sales experience was pretty much all like kind of sales engineering. So being the technical side, coming in and
right,
like a lot of the discovery had probably been made for me, and then I
right.
would come in and be like, okay, this is how this is going to work. Yes, we can do these things. No, we cannot do these things. These are the platforms that make sense for you, and this we could do it over here, but here's why I was just doing this. So um, that was definitely much more the technical sales side of it. Is my experience.
Yeah, the I I've not ever been a sales engineer, but obviously I worked with sales engineers
Yeah.
during my time with Alteryx partners, right? Um, and yeah, the thing about being a sales engineer is that you have to think on the fly. You got to do things really quickly. You have to organize your thoughts, be good at technical presentations, and you have to be good at taking the really complex terminology or logic and like simplifying it so that a, a non-technical user would understand it and would be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I get it. But that's a totally different skill set, I think, for business development. I mean, I think that you would bring some of that, right? But it's not the same skill set. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes. The it is a lot of that, and yes, you're right. You do have to be able to. I would say that one thing I do a lot of like that solutioning as I'm having conversations, even with the business, and
Mhm.
so I find myself having to like stop and be like, okay, I'm not talking to you, but I'm thinking through this and trying to figure out a way that it makes sense for me to tell you what I'm thinking, and because I would say what one of the things I like you how do I put this? One of the perhaps unique perspectives of me and the people on my team is we like having the IT conversations where a lot of people don't, even in like the SE world, don't necessarily love it. I don't think because um, well, let me back up. In the consulting space, they probably do because we do get to talk about a lot of different platforms generally with that, and so you have to have a little bit of technical expertise in a
Mhm.
bunch of stuff. So like let's say I am just doing an Alteryx project, or like a BI project, and it's like, okay, we want to do something that's a dashboard, and they're like, okay, and all our data is over here, and so I get to have conversations about that. And if they're like, actually, we're going to put it in like in Azure or something like that, or we're looking at Microsoft Fabric, or like I get to
Mhm.
talk about all these different platforms and why they work, and because I've done it for a long time, I also get to like push back a little bit. Like once you find that you can talk to these IT people and they get that you know what you're talking about, it's a lot easier to push back on things. So like
Mm.
one of the things I'm exploring right now is the conversation I'm having a lot more right now is around Power BI and Alteryx. And so
Yeah.
a lot of organizations like pick up Power BI, and the visualization half of it's great and very accessible, but like the Power Query part is still fairly technical.
Yes.
And yes, yeah, and then even like, so you get into the DAX and the M and all the background
Mhm.
languages and stuff like that. One of the things I'm talking about more often now is, and I'm pretty sure you and I have had this conversation about why I think Alteryx makes so much sense um, as the engine for Power BI.
Mhm.
Um, because one, it's accessible to line of business users, and two, I'm sorry, when I say accessible to line of business users, is you can have someone with a fairly low technical background or really understands Excel, but also more importantly understands the data, but
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily know how to write SQL or something like that. You can have them
Right.
pick up Alteryx and do fairly well,
Yes.
and it runs fast. It runs extremely fast, and if you build your model correctly, um, all of your data is sitting ready for Power BI to do like the front end uh, DAX, I think is DAX analytics, like on the
Mhm.
actual visualization. And you can build it so that it's not refreshing it. You can do all these things in there too, but it's a lot. I think it's a lot more approachable with Alteryx. Anyway, the point I make of all that is that like once you can kind of establish with an IT team, because like a lot of IT teams are like, no, we're all very much in this one box. This is what we do, and then you can like
Yeah.
have conversations around like why this is like, listen, I get it. I understand it's all one thing. It's one bill, you pay it, all makes sense. But if you're looking for performance, then I would on this one point look at this other platform. So I don't know if
Right.
that necessarily answers the original question, but I think I went off on a little bit of a side note there, but um, yeah, I like the technical aspect of the sale. But like the going and finding leads things, like a lot of these salespeople understand like here's how many leads I have to have a month and get in front of before I can to close. Like let's say it's some like 5 or 6 or 7 to 1 ratio. They're like, okay, if I need to close 5 deals this month or this quarter, then I know I have to get in front of like 35 people. And managing that pipeline and um, also trying to do a lot of the work is difficult. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
so so yeah, that's
Yeah.
been a fun learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I wonder, like, I don't know if you can answer the question, but like, your adaptability, do you think that comes from, like being a military brat?
I
Just,
I knew where that question was coming. I knew when you yeah, 100%. One of the I growing up, my mom told me that like I'd never met a stranger. So like being able to talk to people very face to face, not coming off as like I very like I know I'm technically very good, and even if you look at like my paper, like on paper with something like Alteryx, I'm very well credentialed, but um, I never try to seem so. I always or I never assume anybody does or doesn't know anything generally, especially with the line of business. But yes, that I would say the biggest thing about moving growing up a lot. I was every probably 2 years on average.
yeah.
It's very easy to meet people. It's very easy to kind of like, well, for me, and I can't say this to everybody this experience, but it's easy to kind of meet people where they're at. Especially I would say when like people ask me all the time, like, as a military kid, like, was it hard, like, getting to know people all the time? And it's like, well, one, no, because I met me few new people all the time, but two, everybody else I knew was doing it. So,
Yeah.
like, it, but at the same time, I would meet a lot of people because I would do things outside of the military community. So I'd meet a lot of people who, like, didn't necessarily weren't moving all the time. And so,
Right.
yeah. So that didn't answer the adaptability question, but like, well, that's part of the adaptability, right? The ability to like
I think
meet new
so.
people, talk to,
Yeah.
but like switching like between projects and like understanding like I would say it's almost something I struggle with because I feel like I have I get to this point where like I'm very bored of the thing I'm doing
Mhm.
sometimes, And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? So consulting's always done well for me because I like the projects, like the new projects and the changing. And generally it's when I get like stuck on something for like a year plus, then I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? That isn't to say that I'm anybody watching that's interested in my services. Um, no. So yeah, it has its pros and it definitely has its cons too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny because the things you were talking about, my wife and I have had this conversation before. We've been together like 20, we've been going on like 23 years. But she grew up, she was a military brat. Her dad was in the army. And so they moved around a lot too. So I are you frozen or are you at a
No,
stoplight?
I'm at a
Okay.
stoplight. I'm listening. I'm sorry.
Man, I was like, I can't tell. But but
I think
yeah.
you underestimate the level of my sneakiness.
I think man, my screen is just too small, I think. So I need to upgrade my laptop. But yeah, one of the things that I loved about consulting is that, you get to work with people in so many different industries, right? Like one of the reasons why my network is so big is because every time, I had a new client, uh, I go and send out LinkedIn connections, right? And so then, yeah, working with people in like manufacturing and
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals and banking and like, um, you know, finance stuff, and it definitely keeps the fire stoked as far as like, interest. So I get that where like you're on a long term project, it's like, oh man, I can't wait till the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you, like, what are the things, aside from that, like the difference in the different industries and the different types of projects, is there something else that like keeps you motivated? Because for one thing that maybe people don't know who are not entrepreneurs is that you have to like keep the fire going. You have to be motivated because you're the one bringing in the business, you're bringing in your work, and if you're not on top of it, then you're not, going to be doing well. So what are the other things, what are some of the other things that keep you motivated aside from feeding your family? That's a great motivator.
Yes. Yes. That was going to be my first thing. But
Right.
one of the things that like with entrepreneurship, I feel like it's like, yeah, you work for yourself, but really I work for everybody that works for me too. So
Yeah, no, that's true.
my business partner, he's also made, a fair amount of investment, be it time or money or whatever, into the success of this thing. So like if I fail, we fail together. And then
Hmm.
I have my one cohort employee, Scott, who, if I don't have work for him, then then that's a problem. Not only financially for me, but like financially for him, because you know keeping him working rather than on the bench is we're all motivated by the same thing. I would say
Yeah.
that, but the opposite side of that is that we are all going for the same goal. Like we're all trying to push. Like how do we better our clients and our partners, and how do we like embed ourselves as um, people want to work for? It's a two-way street, right? Like you
Hmm.
do the reward for working hard is more hard work.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, so that's one big thing. The other big thing, like for me, and I think about this a lot, especially as I have like really today was a rough day. So this is why I'm this way, because I was like I gotta go to the gym. And like there's like it's a little bit of sense of like pride too. Like um, I want to do good work, and I want the people around me to do good work because it says a lot about us and who we are as people. And
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
if for nothing else, like we built this cool thing. And I mean the financial aspect of course is like that's keeping food on the table, right? That's the main
that's the number one. I got to do this. So if it doesn't make sense, then we have to step away because I got to feed my family. I got to send them to school. I got to do all that stuff. But we did it. We built something. We made a lot of people's lives better, and people trust us with their sense of, and you build relationships too. That like this isn't just like a working thing. Like I have these people that I work with and I leave. A lot of people, I would say a lot of the people I talk to are from former engagements. Like I have friends from engagements like 4 years ago that I still talk to, and like building those long lasting relationships. And it's not like we're out looking to like see what we can get out of that long term, but like making sure that we really affect people and make their work life better, I guess is what I'm trying to say about all that. Which was like the whole purpose of like getting into Alteryx, right? That I don't remember. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a marketing banner that Alteryx had for years on websites that would say like "Get your nights and weekends back," and I think about that all the time. And so yeah, like how do we help people retrieve those hours in their day?
Yeah. That's that's a huge motivator for me too, because what I do, obviously I work with Alteryx and help people by automating their severely manual reporting processes.
Yeah.
And so if I can take like one like set of things that I'm working on now is like taking a whole department's all the reporting that was all done by collectively, and then like every day, every week, every month, whatever it is, and taking those like 40 hours and then just like condensing it into these workflows, kick them off, boom, like 2 seconds later, 7 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever the case may be, then all of a sudden they got the report. And they don't have to do all the eyeballing, That's that makes me feel good, because then I help them be able to focus on some other things that are, probably more important than like, looking at this number, matching that number, looking at this number, matching that number, and why doesn't it match? And then, oh gosh, that sounds so painful. And I've been there. So, what are some things, like if somebody is thinking about going into business for themselves? Because like I said, the job market is kind of crazy right now, and I've talked to several people who are like, you know what, I think I'm gonna leave corporate and start my own business in whatever. There's like some people who are like, oh, I'm gonna do consulting, or some people are like, I'm gonna have a cleaning business or whatever. It's their own business. What's a piece of advice that you'd give somebody who's thinking about making that switch?
Man, I'm trying to think of like the one piece of advice. I'm trying to think through just everything I have done poorly, and if I could go back, let me. I'm going to rebrand this as like, what would I tell myself a year ago that I should be more prepared for? Because I can really only speak to like what I'm doing, right? Like, I generally have a business plan, know what you're going after, do one thing well, stick to it. Have a nest egg so that like if it doesn't on the pay periods where it doesn't work out or it's not working out, then have a little bit of backup. Be ready for some painful moments, because lots of late nights thinking about like, what am I doing? Like why did I do this to myself? Just be ready for it, and just like remember what your goal is. I guess like it's gonna be hard. It is every bit as hard as they say. I'll say that. And But I would say on the other half of this, one of the best piece of advice I think I got coming into this, a friend of mine, she had said that, like, she was excited for me that I was going to start my own business and go through this entrepreneurial thing. But like the most impactful thing that she said was, like, on the other side of this, like, whether it works out or it doesn't, you'll be a lot better off for it. So like, figuring out how you can learn from as many of the opportunities that you fail at or you succeed at, and understand that, like, the job market won't be bad forever, right? Like, there will be a day when, and so like, if it doesn't work out, then there's no like, as long as you gave it your all, there's no like problems necessarily with, like, if you, so let's say and this is just something that's in my head. This is not me talking about my business, but like, if I had to go back into like consulting, working for somebody, like, I now have a much clearer picture of this whole thing. So I can be of a greater assistance to, I'm just a better consultant now. Like, I know my craft better. I know the parts of the business that I wasn't, or I have not historically been involved with. Yeah, I just said a lot of stuff. Everything's a learning opportunity.
I'm jotting it all down and I'm going to
Oh,
put it in the chat. So
gotcha.
I know I missed some stuff, but it's okay. Everything's a learning opportunity.
Yep. You will be better for it. It may be painful. I know people who are going through like, and I'll just say, like, I've had it pretty good. Like, we have business, everything's good. We're learning how to sell. We're getting better. We're keeping the doors open. But I know people who have like had to spend, like, had to really dip into like savings and back, and it's tough. And they also see the drive. They're also entrepreneurs. They know that, like, the goal is that I'm not eating, ramen packets every night. It feels, on some levels, it feels like I'm in college again. Like, okay, we're going to do ramen packets tonight, and I'm going to get 4 hours of sleep, and I got to go to the gym. So I got to do that. And like, it's definitely a reset. Like,
Yeah.
things have had to take, and I feel like you're my therapist right now. Like,
yeah,
like,
me and whoever else is watching.
Yes. Like, you may have to take some lifestyle hits, and that's okay. I mean, another really great, like, anecdote or like phrase I heard is like, 5 to survive, 10 to thrive. And so it's like the first few years are hard. Like, and that isn't to say, like, this is very much like, I'm not a solopreneur, but like, me and like another buddy started this. If you have, I would say if you have a good enough idea and you can sell yourself well enough, there are opportunities to like make this pain less by finding finding an investor or something of that nature. Though the trade-off of that pain is that, like, maybe you don't completely own your business, or so there are a lot of ways to approach this. It just really kind of depends on what you want on the other side of it.
Yeah, man, that's all really good advice. And you don't see that, like, you don't really, unless you have like already an entrepreneurial spirit, or if you already have some type of experience with that, you don't really, I have not really heard a lot of these things in like just like everyday corporate life.
Yeah.
Definitely have in working for like smaller companies, but because the smaller companies, you're a lot closer to the, top leadership, the people, the founders, closer in proximity, because there's not a whole lot of people between you and them. So, yeah, these are all really good things, man. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. But you don't go anywhere because I want to talk to you if you have time.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes, man. We're gonna catch up like on a personal level.
Of course.
But yeah, everybody else, man, thank you so much for joining. If you want to know, like you want to read back the things that Treyson, talked about, I put a whole mess of it. I probably got like 75% of it from my brain to the keys of my keyboard, and they're on the chat on YouTube. And I don't know if it transfers to LinkedIn. I know it goes to YouTube. But next week we're gonna have a good friend of mine, Chase Hamby, on. Chase, I worked with him when I started my very first civilian job in Nashville, and now he's doing big things in the ATL. So, anyways, yeah, tune in next week at 6 p.m. Central Time. I'll see you there. Peace.
Thanks, Tito. Thanks, everybody.